Happy Friday, Who Dat Nation. We got some juicy Saints news and rumors to get into. So let's not waste any time and dive right in. The Saints legend, Drew Brees, the quarterback legend that we all have known and loved for many, many years. We finally have a quarterback replacement in Derek Carr. He seems to be the long-term answer after the question of who's going to take over for Drew Brees. Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Andy Dalton, none of them really worked out. Taysom Hill, but Drew Brees believes in the new quarterback, Derek Carr, and believes that the Saints are, quote, well-positioned to make a run at it. We're also going to get into some interesting trade targets and some trade ideas that I cooked up, but before we get to that, go ahead and get geared up for the 2023 NFL Draft. We are less than 1 week away. These are the hats that all of the Saints draft picks are going to be rocking. And so if you want to be fresh, if you want to get cleaned up, you want to get the baseball cap like our guy Mikey Taylor, you can go to chatsports.com/SaintsHat. I want to give a quick shout out and show some extra love to Mikey Taylor for getting his hat with our link. If you get any gear with our link at chatsports.com/SaintsHat or any of our other products, feel free to DM/tweet me a picture of it, and we'll get you on the show. So let's see what Drew Brees had to say about the New Orleans Saints and why he thinks they could make a run at a playoff/Super Bowl run. I think he'll mesh well with offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. I think he's got some weapons around him. This is what Brees told Luke Johnson of The Advocate on Wednesday. I'm excited that Michael Thomas will be back and hopefully healthy. He deserves that. I think they're going to be well positioned to make a run at it. And here's just some few reasons why I think that the Saints will succeed this year. So you have some really strong support around Derek Carr. And interesting enough, Drew Brees did add to that. We've seen just what a difference one position can make on one team. And now, for example, look at what Tom Brady did for the Bucs. And, that's not saying that Derek Carr is going to go and win the Saints a Super Bowl in year one, but it was a position in need, and it was addressed, and you have a strong supporting cast around Derek Carr. Then you also have a great defense. DC has never had a good defense around him. He's never had a great defense around him, let alone. So I'm excited to see what he can do with a good unit on the other side of the football. And then he also brings there's a strong veteran presence, not only with just Derek Carr, but with players like Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, as well as a lot of other players on the Saints roster. And to be fair, the schedule isn't really that tough, and the NFC South is a very, very weak division. So here's more of what Drew Brees had to say on Derek Carr specifically. He said, I think that he caught the brunt of that unfairly. And I think that you shoulder a lot of that burden as the quarterback anyway. I think highly of him as a person. He's shown the ability to execute complicated offenses where a lot is put on the quarterback position to be able to make checks and make reads very quickly. He's proven that. And over the last 4 years, when you take a look at the numbers Derek Carr has put up, obviously in 2022, the numbers are a little underwhelming, which is why he moved on from the Raiders, why the Raiders moved on from him and ended up cutting him, giving the Saints the ability to sign him in free agency. However, in 2021, the numbers were pretty damn impressive. 68.4 completion percentage, 4,800 yards in the air, 23 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. And I truly do believe that Derek Carr could pass for 4,000 plus yards again this year. And if he can do that, I think the Saints can go and win a lot of games. And why I specifically believe in Derek Carr, not just the Saints as a team, I know for a fact that Derek Carr can win down the stretch. He has 33 game-winning drives in his career. He's very, very tough, and he's only missed 4 games in his career, and only two of those were due to injury. He's a great leader. He can rally the locker room when he wants to, and he can be that force and that guy on the Saints offense that can say, hey, get your nose down. Let's go win this damn football game. And that's something that the Saints haven't had in previous years. I don't know if y'all saw what Andy Dalton said recently of it didn't really seem like anybody wanted to win the division at the end of the day. That's not the case. That's not going to be the case here with Derek Carr. You also have plenty of pass catchers on the roster between your running backs, your tight end room, and your receiver room. You have plenty of tools and plenty of weapons for Derek Carr. And then there's also a good amount of draft capital to further help Carr and help boost up the roster on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And in terms of why I believe the Saints can make a good run in the 2023 season, the opponents aren't that solid. The NFC South, it's not going to be good, but I do believe it will be better this year. The Atlanta Falcons have added a good amount of talent, a lot of it from the New Orleans Saints, but they have added talent, so that is worth noting. The Carolina Panthers have a new coaching staff. You have the first overall pick. They could be bringing in Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, so that team will look a lot different, and obviously the offense will probably be better. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they might not be as good. They're going to be pretty bad this year, if you ask me. You have Baker Mayfield as your QB1. Kyle Trask isn't going to get it done if you have to rely on him and fall back to Kyle Trask. But in terms of the other opponents outside of the division, you have the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions at home. You also take on the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. Also, the Houston Texans is going to be a home game. The Indianapolis Colts, an away game, would love to go and beat the Colts again. Thanks for that Super Bowl victory a handful of years ago. It's always fun whipping up on the Colts. Jacksonville Jaguars, you play them in New Orleans. You go to LA to take on the Rams, but then you also have to travel to Minneapolis to go take on the Minnesota Vikings. Then you also have to hit up Foxborough and go take on Mac Jones. Maybe Mac Jones, maybe not, but Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots. And then you get Danny Dimes, who's coming off a fresh contract with the New York Giants at home at the Dome. And then you also take on the Tennessee Titans, who are pretty much a dumpster fire when it comes to what's going on in the offseason. They really aren't doing much, and they are kind of just, it feels like they're just shelling out stuff in order to prepare for future offseasons to come. So I want you, Who Dat Nation, to take a guess for me. How many wins will the Saints get in 2023? I think that this team, no questions asked, could win at least 11 games. I think that this team is capable of winning 11 games. I don't think that 11, anything less than 11, 10, I think that's very within reason. I think that's in the question because you play those 5 games within the division. Assuming you maybe lose 1 or 2 of those, you can easily take down the Colts, the Vikings. I don't think that they're going to be as good this year. I think that you could easily take down the Texans and a lot of these other teams. The Bucs, I think you easily sweep them. The only team I'm really concerned about in the NFC South, as bad as it sounds, is the Falcons, and I think that the Saints can go and win 11 games. I am so damn excited for this season, and if you're excited for this Saints season, I want you to go down and hit that sub button. I'm not going to sit here and beg for you guys to go do it, but if you're excited for this Saints season, if you bleed black and gold, lock us in, subscribe. We're a Saints YouTube channel by Saints fans for Saints fans. So let's now get into some veteran trade targets for the New Orleans Saints. And I wanted to cook up some interesting names. I wanted to bring some names that we hadn't quite discussed yet on this channel. But before we get started, go down again really quickly. Just take 10 seconds. Name a player that you want to trade for. I'm going to be interacting with all of y'all in the comment section. I'm excited to see what the Who Dat Nation has to say because I know for a fact y'all know ball. So let's get into Javon Kinlaw. He's a former first-round pick out of South Carolina. He just hasn't lived up to expectations with the San Francisco 49ers. And in his entire career, in just 24 games, that's a big concern for me. 45 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, 5 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. So in terms of why the 49ers would do it, here's 4 reasons why I believe the 49ers would be interested in moving Javon Kinlaw. And there has been some buzz and there has been some talk about whether or not they will release him. Will they maybe just keep him? Could they? I mean, they're not going to get a ton of money. They're not going to save really any money if they cut him. So why they may want to trade him? Hasn't been a good fit with San Francisco since he's been drafted in the first round. The Niners could also open up a roster spot when I know that they want to keep that defensive line talented and with a lot of energy and a lot of production. In San Francisco, also desperate as hell for draft capital. They don't have really any good, they don't have many draft picks. A lot of them are in the back half of day 2 and a lot in day 3. And I know for a fact that the 49ers did sign Javon Hargrave, so you can easily move on and not miss Javon Kinlaw too much after bringing in Hargrave, who had a really good year with the Philadelphia Eagles last season. And here's why I believe the Saints might be interested in doing it. So the Saints do have a need at defensive tackle. You lost David Onyemata to NFL free agency, which is a big loss. I mean, he was pretty damn good for the Saints last year, and I think that the Saints need to go and replace him, and I've talked in great extent about that. A trade would not be that expensive either. That's what's really interesting and kind of the intriguing thing about this for me, and the fact that he's still young. He's only 25 years old, and it would be some good young depth there. A change of scenery might help for him. I think that the Saints have a quality, and I think y'all could agree with me on this. The Saints have a quality defensive line unit. They have a quality defensive coaching staff. Dennis Allen, let's call it how it is. I don't necessarily think he's the best head coach. I think that he makes some questionable decisions, some questionable play calls, and some questionable, ways of handling things. That being said, I do know for a fact that Dennis Allen knows how to run a defense. So maybe it makes sense. And here's this trade idea that I cooked up for it. Again, it's not going to cost you anything. So Javon Kinlaw for a 5th-round pick at number 165. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. I think that it's not an out of question thing to go and do. That being said, I just wouldn't make the trade. I wouldn't go and do it. He hasn't been good. He hasn't produced. There's a reason why the Niners may move on from him. There's a reason the Niners haven't picked up his 5th-year option. He hasn't been good in San Francisco. And honestly, there's a lot of quality players on that San Francisco defensive line. But if you need to go and get defensive tackle help, go cheap, go get somebody in the NFL draft and make it a priority as well, is what I will say. But you tell me, Who Dat Nation, because this show's not about me. Y'all know the drill. It's all about you. So would you trade for Javon Kinlaw? Type T for trade, type P for pass. Let me know, Who Dat Nation. I'll be seeing what you guys have to say. And then on top of that, I think I would much rather bring in this next guy. Should the Saints bring in the Predator, the former Ohio State Buckeye, Chase Young, could potentially get traded by the Washington Commanders. Now, this is why we're talking about it, because the Commanders have yet to pay Chase Young after giving long-term deals to both Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, which is interesting. It would be expensive. You would have to pay him. He's still young, and he's still talented, and he has a lot of upside, but there are massive injury concerns, and there's a lot of missed time for Chase Young when you break down the stats by year for what he was able to do. In 2020, he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year. He was a freak athlete. He was a freak football player, and he was damn good for Washington. At that time, they were the Washington football team, but he was really good for Washington. 44 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles as a rookie. Unreal. In 2021, though, he did miss some time. That wasn't his rookie year. That was his second year. He tore his ACL his first. No, he tore Joe Burrow's ACL. I'm getting things mixed up. See, I get in my own head. I just want our defensive line to be better so I don't have to talk about this. So in 2021, 9 games played, 26 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, a sack and a half, and 2 forced fumbles. Last season, though, very, very not appealing, and only 3 games played, 5 tackles, and then, a goose egg for tackles for loss, sacks, and forced fumbles. My take on this, though, I think that Chase Young and Cam Jordan would be insane. It would be such an insane duo. It would be such a fun 1-2 punch to have on both sides of the defensive line. That being said, if Chase Young stays healthy, I would love to go and see what's up with him. And here's the trade idea that I cooked up. So it costs you a little bit more, but I still don't think that this necessarily breaks the bank. Now, the Saints would receive Chase Young. They would have to give up the 2nd-round pick this year, number 40 overall, and then their 5th-round pick next year. And before I get you guys' thoughts on this, I will say this. Chase Young would be a phenomenal and potential generational talent. You would have to likely pay him afterwards. You would have to go and get address the defensive line either way. So I think that bringing in a defensive end or defensive tackle in free agency or in the draft, and then on top of that, going and drafting a defensive lineman would be the best play for the Saints. And also, the Saints, bear in mind, do have just under $15 million in cap space, around 14.6, give or take some change in there, about $14.5 to $15 million in cap space. So who says no? I want you to let me know. If you are getting phone calls, if you are on the phone, if you are the one that's going to be taking these trade talks, who says no? Type S for Saints, type C for Commanders. And Who Dat Nation, one more friendly reminder. Please don't forget to subscribe today. Help us out. Lock us in. Join our squad because this is the #1 place to get all your Saints news, rumors, draft updates, and all sorts of fun content that's also interactive. Y'all stay golden, Who Dat Nation. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch you next time. See you later.